Hello and welcome to the Movies Past and Present podcast. This is episode 1 of the podcast and it's November 8th, 2018. I'm your host, Stanford Clark, and I am podcasting from the Crossroads of the West in beautiful Salt Lake City, Utah. Just like my blog, moviespastandpresent.com, I'll be providing reviews and commentary about current and classic cinema. Thanks for tuning in and let's get started. First off, let's talk about the new releases in theaters for the weekend of Friday, November 9th, 2018. We've got 3 big studio releases this weekend. First up is Dr. Seuss's The Grinch, which is a computer-generated animated version of this beloved tale. It's based on the 1957 book by Dr. Seuss. And in the year 2000, there was also a live-action film adaptation of it, directed by Ron Howard and starring Jim Carrey. So here we've got another feature-length version of this story. But I got to tell you, I still think it's just hard to beat the 1966 animated TV special that was directed by Chuck Jones and narrated by the great Boris Karloff. These film adaptations, again, I haven't seen this new one. The one done in 2000, the live action one, I just thought was pretty dreadful. You know, the real issue I have with it is that here they're taking a children's story that's got a pretty simple narrative, trying to turn it into a 90-plus minute feature film. So, of course, some details have got to be added. And it always seems to be that they go for some kind of a backstory. So we learned that the Grinch is bullied as a child or something and was misunderstood. And, you know, it's how he became the Grinch. And just think, no, he was the Grinch. Anyway, this backstory business drives me nuts. So I'm not just dying to see this film. I probably will go. If I do, I'll let you know. But Dr. Seuss's The Grinch opens, and I think a lot of families will probably be going. Illumination Entertainment, which is the animation studio behind it, they have the blessing of the Dr. Seuss estate. They've also, the producers of the film have also worked with Dr. Seuss's family and this, you know, those people over his estate. On 2 other films, Horton Hears a Who and the Lorax. So we'll see what they do. Probably visually it's going to be fun. They do some nice animation there at Illumination, but I don't know. I think if you really want to Grinch it, just watch that great 1966 animated special, which I think is widely available and will be on TV during the month of December too. The Grinch is rated PG for brief, rude humor. All right, next is Overlord. Overlord is a part war movie and part zombie horror movie. It's set in World War II. Clearly, it's going to be a big revisionist history type of story. And it appears that it's going for R-rated thrills. In fact, it is rated R for strong bloody violence, disturbing images, language, and brief sexual content, according to the Motion Picture Association of America. So, anyway, it's from Paramount Pictures. This one really isn't my thing either, but if you like zombie horror movies with lots of gore, sounds like this might be a fun diversion for your weekend. All right, then last up, with the big studio releases this weekend, is The Girl in the Spider's Web, a new dragon tattoo story. This is from Columbia Pictures. It is an adaptation of the 4th novel in this Millennium series, as it's called, which began with the Swedish crime author Stieg Larsson. So, sorry if any of this is a boring repeat to you, but I think there's a lot of versions of this stuff going on, and hopefully this will help make some sense of it all. So Stieg Larsson wrote the original book, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and he had envisioned 10 books in this series, and the series was called the Millennium series. And he ended up dying in 2004 after he only had finished 3 of the books. So the family and the estate of Stieg Larsson finally in 2015 they published another book in this Millennium series called The Girl in the Spider's Web. And it was written by a Swedish man by the name of David Lagerkrantz. Sorry about my pronunciation. So he then a film version, that book was published in 2015. This film version is now coming out this weekend. So there were 3 those 3 original books. Those all got made into movies in Sweden. I saw that the first one that came out in 2009, also called The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and it's pretty grisly stuff. Again, not really my thing. But so in 2011, an American version of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was released, and it was directed by David Fincher, and it starred Rooney Mara as our main character, Lisbeth Salander. So in this new story, The Girl in the Spider's Web, Claire Foy picks up the lead as Lisbeth, and it just looks like it's more of the same. So we'll see how it plays and how audiences respond. This film is rated R for violence, language, and some sexual content and nudity. There you have it. So 3 releases this weekend: The Grinch, Overlord, and The Girl in the Spider's Web. Now for a couple of reviews which I've recently posted to my blog of 2 big releases that opened up last weekend, so on November 2nd. First is The Nutcracker and the Four Realms. This is a big feature film from Walt Disney Studios. So family-oriented. It's a somewhat kind of a retelling of the Nutcracker, but really it's just an original story. In fact, I really don't know if there was even a Nutcracker in it. There were soldiers, but as far as just like kind of Nutcracker turning into human or vice versa, anyway. But it stars Clara, this cute little girl Clara, who ends up going into this strange parallel world. There are 4 realms. These people in the 4 realms are fighting each other. It also stars Helen Mirren and Keira Knightley. Keira Knightley plays the Sugar Plum Fairy, and Helen Mirren plays another character. And I don't want to spoil it for you if you're going to go. It's really quite mediocre. I thought it was lovely to look at, which was the thing that surprised me the most, because seeing the previews, it looks so heavy on the computer-generated imagery that I thought I might not like it that much because of that. But actually, it's the story or lack thereof that really makes the film rather boring. It made me sad, though, ultimately, because they really brought in an A-list team of creatives to work on it. So it was co-directed by Lasse Hallström and Joe Johnston. I don't know who did what part, if they split up tasks or if one of them had to take over for whatever reason. But anyway, 2 very competent directors. And then James Newton Howard did a lovely soundtrack. They brought in Gustav Odudamel, who is a marvelous symphonic conductor. He's currently the music director of the LA Philharmonic, and he's conducting all over the world. But they did some cool stuff with him that was very reminiscent of Fantasia, Walt Disney's original Fantasia with Leopold Stokowski conducting. I loved that. In fact, I was wishing that they would show more of that. The pianist Lang Lang is on the soundtrack, and they brought in Misty Copeland, who is the principal dancer with American Ballet Theater in New York, who's just this amazing ballet dancer. And then the end credits has a really nice song by Andrea Bocelli and his son. But sadly, all this creative talent still can't save a pretty stupid story. All right, then the other big release last weekend was Bohemian Rhapsody, which is the Queen biopic, or really more of a Freddie Mercury biopic. Although I guess it's still some of both. But they show in this film kind of a history of the band and a lot of concert footage and different things that were all, I guess, concert recreations. So everybody I talked to that has seen this movie, for the most part, really likes it. And I think that my theory behind it, the reason is because it ends on such a brilliant note. So the biopic part is really almost a slog, I thought. Kind of dotted with cool concert scenes, as well as some interesting scenes on the creative process that the band used to record some of their great albums. But it just really got bogged down with the biography part. And then also it turns out that they really took some artistic liberty with timeline and events. They meaning the filmmakers. Now I understand that you got to cram a lot of information often into these biopics, and you also need to make it dramatically interesting for the viewer, right? So sure, some of that stuff has to happen, but these things were big enough and kind of obvious enough that I thought they were problematic. Spoiler alert on a couple of these things in case you haven't seen the film already. But so the big climax of this movie is the Live Aid concert from 1985, that big benefit concert that was thrown in both the UK and the US. And pretty much every major act had a set, either in the US or in Great Britain. And so it was at Wembley Stadium in London, and Queen had just an absolutely brilliant set they did, and it's well documented on. There's versions of it. You can see it on YouTube and whatnot. And I know the word has been a bit overused, but it's electric. It is just amazing. This set that Queen performed, they were just at the top of their game, and so good. And the film really captures that, and so you leave on a real high. But right up to this Live Aid scene in the movie, Freddie Mercury goes to his parents' house. He's literally dressed in the stuff that he's wearing, the clothes that he's wearing for the Live Aid show. And he goes and has tea with his parents, and kind of has a reconciliation with his dad, who he's been at odds with for really pretty much the whole movie. And then he also, even before that, he finds this guy who he was because he wanted to date, and he had been looking for him for a while. He had met him at a party, so then he finds the guy too, and then of course takes him to go have tea with his parents before they go to the show. So some of that stuff, it just kind of rolled my eyes, really, can we have done something, maybe a little more to reality, or make it more make it more interesting. I don't know. That part really didn't work for me. But holy smokes, then the last 20 plus minutes of the film are all this Live Aid recreation, and it's awesome. So again, you leave on a high. Had some good stuff. Rami Malek is so good in the role. He is Freddie Mercury, just like you're hearing everybody say. And concert stuff is cool, but wow, I have some real problems with the plot. So anyway, that's those are reviews. Now it's time for Classic Cinema Corner, where I talk classic movies, talk about opportunities to see classic movies on the big screen, as well as other pertinent information for the classic movie fan. First up is the demise, sadly, of the streaming service called FilmStruck. FilmStruck was created a couple of years ago by the folks at Turner Classic Movies and the Criterion Collection. And they just had a really cool, eclectic mix of classic, foreign, and art house films. And beautifully curated, lovely graphics, wonderful little documentaries that they scattered throughout the film, or throughout their library or programs that they had available, and just a really a great service that really filled, I think, kind of a niche for people that like art house movies and that like a little different selection that's readily available on Netflix. So sadly, the Warner Media Group, which is this new group which has been formed under the new ownership of Warner Brothers, under AT&T, but they decided to close it. It's closing November 29th, and it's just a bum deal. I mean, I know that there's a petition that people are encouraged to sign. I think last I read, even this morning, that there were over 25,000 people who had signed this petition. I don't know if the Warner Media Group is going to be listening to this at all, because frankly, I think that they've got some other stuff in mind of what they're wanting to do with streaming services, given that it's such a highly competitive marketplace now, and so going to be so hotly contested, both with everything that Netflix is doing, and then with Disney throwing in their hat in the ring in 2019, and all sorts of stuff's going on. So anyway, but still, it was so nice to have this classic movie and Criterion Collection movie home, but we'll see what happens. So anyway, R.I.P. FilmStruck, and thanks for just being great. Thanks to the team who created it. It's just terrific. Speaking of Netflix, they've got a couple of interesting new films. I think one of the big weaknesses of Netflix is they have a horrible selection of what I consider classic films. So thank goodness for Turner Classic Movies. The Turner Classic Movies Network is fantastic, and then they also do a really nice job with their on-demand selections that you can view through their Watch TCM app, or if I've got Xfinity, and they've got a nice on-demand channel that shows pretty much the same movies that you can find on this Watch TCM app. If you're already, if you've got if you're paying for cable TV with the service, you can access these. So anyway, they have got some Orson Welles programming, which is really interesting. Orson Welles' last project was this movie that he worked on for many, many years called The Other Side of the Wind, and he never finished it. And Orson Welles, as we all know, was really a tortured artist. I think kind of an unhappy man, really bitter at Hollywood, really bitter towards Hollywood, toward the studio system. Wonder, I think, too, how much that bitterness was also just toward American tastes or whatnot. But the folks at Netflix funded both a documentary about this film, the Other Side of the Wind film, and then they financed a group under the supervision of director Peter Bogdanovich, who's an actor in the film, to make a finished cut. And then they've put it out on the Netflix service. So I've watched the documentary about it, which is called They'll Love Me When I'm Dead. And then I'm hoping this week to watch the actual film, The Other Side of the Wind. Now, I've just have seen some reviews or some comments on Twitter and other places about people who've seen The Other Side of the Wind, and they haven't been too positive. So I'm not expecting a lot. I think I respect Orson Welles' work more than I enjoy it. So, but we'll see. I just think it's interesting that they did it, and good for Netflix for using some of their deep pockets to fund something that's kind of interesting and artistic, like this. Then, one final note on the big screen this Sunday. So Sunday, November 11th, and Wednesday, November 14th, Turner Classic Movies is screening a 30th anniversary edition, I guess if you call it, although I think it's just the same movie, of Die Hard. So Die Hard as in Bruce Willis, yippee-ki-yay, beep beep, and Alan Rickman, Bonnie Bedelia, all directed by John McTiernan. So how fun is that going to be to see it on the big screen? It's hard to believe it's been 30 years. But the film came out in 1988, and it's going to be the November edition of the Turner Classic Movies Big Screen Classics series. So check the Fathom Events website. It's fathomevents.com/TCM, and it'll tell you if it's playing at a theater near you. And I just love these Fathom Events screenings that so much that TCM does, and I hope they'll last forever. All right, well, so that does it for this episode of Movies Past and Present. Thank you again for tuning in, and we will hopefully see you next week.
Bye.